Hello, welcome to another week in ICD-10 PCS coding. This week, we're dealing with OB. Some of the things that you're going to be coming up against in coding these things are two things: root operations and terms. Let's take a quick look at some of these. Even though this isn't OB related, and is from last week, I thought I would use this as an example of how you can find these codes. So this comes from last week's chapter review. A student emailed me and said, I have two questions. So her question was, is it going to be OQBQ0ZZ for the body part being the toe phalanx, the second being 0SBP0ZZ for a bunionectomy open approach? Let's take a quick look and see how we get that code. Experienced coders sometimes will go right to the tables and do the codes. But what I would suggest if you're new to ICD-10 PCS coding is go to the alphabetic index. And much like ICD-10 CM, it looks something like this. Over here, you can see bunionectomy. So bunionectomy is 0QB. So that gives us the first three characters of our 7-character string, and we just have to figure out the other 4. Now we need to go to 0QB. Since bunionectomy is an operation on bones, we'll start there. And here are our tables, 0Q2. And then we get to keep flipping through. And here we are. Note here, just like we had in the alpha, 0QB. Now we need to figure out the other parts, starting with the body part, moving to the approach, the device, and qualifier. Let's take a look at the body part. In this case, it's going to be the metatarsal. The toe phalanx, right or left, is not correct. And this comes down to terminology. If you need clarification on this, as the student did, you can go to the diagrams that are included next to the tables, such as you see here. So now we have our 4 characters. We have 0, Q, B, and then it's the right, so it's going to be the N instead of P. They used an open approach, no device, and no qualifier. And here's our code. And again, these first 3 come out of the alphabetic index. N, 0 for open, Z, Z. So the code is 0QB, N, 0, ZZ. Often what goes wrong with PCS coding is people overlook 2 things. The first is the root operation. The second is the terminology. This is where PCS was much more challenging than ICD-9 procedure coding, because using PCS, you have to completely understand all the different parts of the foot, the difference between a tarsal, a metatarsal, and what have you. If you're confused on the root operations, there is a table that defines them in the back of the PCS book. You can apply the same type of logic to the obstetrics in this chapter. Think about what the procedure is. Read the operative note and determine what type of approach it is. What's the body system, the body part? And then just work your way through the tables and you should be able to get the correct code. What body system it is, isn't whether it's OB, whether it's medical surgical, whether it's something else. The main thing you have to do is understand what the procedure is, where the alphabetic index comes in. That gives you the first 3 characters. Then the body part, the approach, and so on. I hope you find this helpful. We'll take a look at the obstetrics procedures and give an example in the video lecture. One last request, please remember to fill out the student survey that's on the HIM bulletin board if you have not done so already. Thanks a lot and have a great week. Bye now.